Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting tape delayed from the assistant trainer's office deep inside an abandoned 70s multi-purpose stadium. The Sports Economy Show is on. I'm Bill, and this is JP. This is our very first YouTube show, and we're going to be talking about NIL money in college football and basketball and other assorted sports. So if you are interested in this at all, it'll be great because it's interesting to us. I was confused about this whole thing when I first heard about it. I still am confused, but we're going to try to give you some information. We were discussing this today. JP was going, this is supposed to be the way it is. I said, this is supposed to be the way it is, but it's not. And there are no rules. There are no rules from what I can understand. So, JP, could you give us a little bit of information and start our subjects off, please?
So basically, we're going to talk about the NIL today and college and how it affects college sports. You know, there's many people who are out there who are just as confused as everyone else. It seems like it's, college. The NCAA has basically set it up where there's no system, there's no structure. So, in my opinion, I don't really have a problem with the NIL. And for those who don't know what the NIL is, it's name, image, and likeness. So basically, college athletes can take advantage of their name, image, and likeness. So if somebody wants to they can use themselves to make money, which is unlike the way it used to be, where they basically couldn't make any profit based off of them being an athlete or a public figure for the university. So we're going to start with...
I got one thing. This all started when the O'Bannon brothers,
yes,
who played basketball at UCLA, sued because their image was being used in a video game.
Correct.
That
basically jump-started the whole...
That was the basic start of where the lawsuits began. Right. And how this all came about after the NCAA was finally sued and kept losing, and finally they gave it up. We have to let this go.
So basically, NCAA...
That's about what you think what happened, is how this started?
Well, it jump-started, yeah. I mean, but people have always been complaining about college athletes not making any money. When you think about the amount of money in college sports, especially the football and basketball, those sports make so much money, and the athletes, weren't making anything for years.
They were having a hard time buying food.
Yeah, so when I hear people complain about the amount of money that the athletes are making now, I understand it, but at the same time, you got to remember back in the day, you had teams like like Jalen Rose used to talk about it all the time. He was, with Michigan in the early 90s, the Fab Five, and he's got, he's not making any money. And, they're making a ton of money. He's seeing people walking around in his jerseys, and his jersey, the number 5. So, I mean, it's really not fair. It wasn't fair back then, and now it's gotten to a point where, they've just basically loosened the reins, and everybody's just taking advantage of it, and it's just basically the Wild Wild West. So, all right, so let's go to our first topic of this, first part of this conversation. Let's talk about the NCAA lawsuit, and I'll let Bill take over for that.
I found this on the internet, and this is just a proposed settlement from the NCAA. This is not law. Who knows if it'll ever come out. But anyway, they say the schools are allowed to share athletic department revenues. What are revenues from the athletic department? Nobody really understands that. With their varsity athletes. While not finalized, under the proposed revenue sharing model, schools will be allowed to distribute up to 22% of annual athletic revenues to their athletes, not to exceed an annual compensation cap of $21 million per school. So the NCAA still doesn't want to give up control. So they're saying you can share up to $21 million of your yearly athletic income. My guess is we'll use a football game this weekend is Texas, Michigan. That game will bring in a lot of money. A lot of money.
Yes. Yeah.
I would assume that Texas is going to make their athletic department will bring in more than $21 million this year.
Oh, I'm sure.
But the NCAA says, no, you can't spend it on your athletes. So that's what the lawsuit is about. Will the NCAA ever give up complete control? I don't know.
Now, is that for all of their athletes? You know, like
it says the athletic department, but you know that women's volleyball is not getting paid the same as football.
Right.
So, should they? Well, it depends on how much revenue you bring in. That's the way they look at it. So,
because that was the whole thing with the NIL. So that's the reason why the NIL really jumped off. It's a way of athletes, making money.
Yeah.
Because originally everybody wanted to say that everyone needed to be paid.
Yeah.
So if you pay the football players and you pay the basketball players, well, you got to play the volleyball team. You got to pay the swim team. So, there was a clash with that, but we all know who was really making the big money, and that was basketball and football. So now you have the NIL, and people can make a profit off of that. But so now, I've kind of gotten off topic, but I'll let you go.
Anyway, it's just a proposed deal where the SEC is in 2025 will be able to pay $21 million to their athletes. The Big Ten will be able to pay $20.3 million to their athletes. The ACC will be able to pay $18.5 million to their athletes. The Big 12 will be able to pay $14.5 million to their athletes. The Pac-12, which has two teams, they'll be able to pay $13.4 million to their athletes. So there's really, as JP pointed out earlier, there's no rules. It's all just up in the air. But at least the players now have a way to make money. So they can do some negotiating to make some money. We were discussing this earlier. It's like a bowl of spaghetti. You'll never reach the bottom of it. And the only thing that I have a problem with the NIL is players can leave after 1 year, which causes a problem with the coaches because they don't know. They got to get 3/4 of their team next year, and the fans get tired of it. So I wish they would have at least a 2-year deal, but that's neither here nor there. But I am glad that they're getting paid. And they're getting paid what they should get paid based on negotiation.
Right. And, as the average, in a small Division I school, the offensive lineman is probably not making much money off the NIL, but he also has a chance to do that. So, like, if he's popular on social media, if he has a following, if he builds a following, if he has a personality, that even if he wasn't an athlete, he could use that and parlay into making money, just like so many young adults are doing right now, taking advantage of social media and making money as social influencers or whatever. If an athlete can do that and parlay that to his personal, and basically associate that with him being an athlete and parlay that into money, then I'm all for it. But a majority of the students are not going to be able to do that. Student athletes are not going to be able to do that. But those that are the main athletes will. And those are the people who probably have the biggest gripe when they weren't getting paid. So,
like Chris Webber?
Correct.
With the Fab Five.
Right, correct. Now, it was a good chance that they were getting money in those days.
But
we're
they
not
were
going to
taking
be
a chance that
right.
their school could get
But now it's legal.
Yeah.
Back in the day, Reggie Bush, whatever actually went down, if it was today, it would be perfectly fine. So, and I don't really have a problem with it. If you're a great athlete and, millions of people are tuning in to see you, then I think it's only fair for you to profit for it.
Johnny Mizell. All right, let's
Yeah.
move on to have another topic here. These are what's called collectives, NIL collectives. These are the top 10. What these do, these are boosters who collect money from whoever, other boosters and whoever wants to give money so they can pay athletes to come to their school. Most of this is football, obviously. But Georgia has a collective called Classic City Collective. Ohio State has their largest one is the 870 Society. They have at least 3 collectives so they can bring in money to the school. Oregon has one called the Division Street. Texas has Texas One Fund Collective. Alabama has the YayAlabama.com Collective. Ole Miss has the Grove Collective. Notre Dame has the Fund, which stands for Friends of University of Notre Dame Collective. Penn State has the Penn State. They have 4 of those. Michigan has one called MGODAO. That's from what I can tell, that's the biggest one of the 3. And Florida State, which used to be in the top 10, obviously, sadly, not anymore, they have 3 collectives. So you can go and find one of these things and give them money, and they will be bothering you forever and ever and ever, because once you start giving them money, they'll never stop, because this thing's just going to get bigger. Would you agree that?
Oh yeah,
this NIL,
it's just the beginning. And if you think it's crazy now, if they don't come up with some kind of system in the future, it's just going to be out of hand. And it's also going to, like college sports has always been the haves and have-nots. When you watch the NCAA basketball tournament, it's the major conference teams against the little teams. And that's what makes it great, because every once in a while, a little team will show up and can make a little run. But it's rare that they get far in the tournament, because they just don't have the resources and the money to get the athletes that they would like to get.
And now it's going to become even more pronounced.
That's correct.
Because we'll use schools like North Carolina, Duke. They have the money to bring in these high-priced athletes who will play for them for 1 year, and then they're going to go to the NBA.
And I mean, it's also the alumni.
Yeah.
If you can ask the alumni to donate to the school for these NIL funds, it makes a big difference. If you have a school where you have people who pay a lot of money to go to the school, more than likely those people actually have money or have more money than students who are going to smaller schools, mainly because of the tuition, or they may not have,
You had to go to
economically,
college,
it may not be
like UVA or Ohio State costs a lot more money than going to Jacksonville.
Right.
Something like
Exactly. So I mean, those schools, those big schools have, alumni that can really help boost those schools, and they always have. But if you can add that where you can give money to the players because of that, it makes a big difference.
that. Yeah. So anyway, now we're going to see the haves and have-nots really coming to fruition. It's always been that way, but this is going to really bring it out. So the future of NIL. We just talked a little bit about it's going to keep getting big. Do you think there will ever be rules? Do you think the NCAA will issue rules, or do you think the colleges will get together and issue rules based on something that they come up with? Like we'll use the Power 4 conferences now.
Well, I think there will be one day, but everything has to go through the courts. It seems like everything has to go through the courts, or there has to be a lot put into it where everybody is on the same page in order for a system to be made. You're talking about a lot of money and a lot of people involved, and you have schools and athletes, and there's just so much money involved that I believe the process is going to take a while. And at this point, when you look at it and you just say, well, it's going to get to a point where I think the only way it's going to change is it's going to get to a point where it's just completely out of control. Right now, it is a little bit out of control, but people still tune in to their favorite sports and they watch it. The audiences are, at an all-time high. But I just think that eventually it's going to get to a point, you're going to have athletes who are essentially making, 10 times as much money as their coach. And, whether you think, well, technically it's fine.
There are players right now in the NCAA making more than Brock Purdy, who's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers.
Right. But at the same time, it's supposed to be, what they get out of it. So, like, if you are, like if you're Arch Manning in Texas, you are a Manning, you go to Texas, he's not even playing right now. He's not even the starter. But his name gives him the ability to, promote himself and make money off of who he is. And there's, hey, if he can make the money, go ahead and make the money. But there's also going to be people who become stars in college who are going to make a ton of money. And the downside to that is you're also talking about young adults with money. So you have coaches that are supposed to be coaching these players, and they're basically coaching pro athletes. So how are these coaches going to get to a point where they can get their message across to make these athletes better? Because eventually, it's going to come, they're going to have problems. It's not the old days. I mean, it's already changed as it is. When you and I were teenagers, the coaches were just pretty much
tyrants.
Right. They just drove the players into the ground, and they tried to make them tough. Right. They tried to. That's right. Those days have changed because people realize it was a little bit out of control, and people don't tolerate that anymore. But when it comes to money, if you have a player that's making a lot of money and the coach is trying to tell them what to do, you could have a problem. So I just look at the future of college sports. When I look at it, I just feel like everything has become, it's all about money. So when you look at, when you're looking at college sports, all of these conferences, when you have USC and UCLA and what used to be the Big Ten.
The Big Ten is coast to coast now. They have this graphic. It literally, they show these schools popping up. It starts in the Pacific Northwest and goes all the way across the country to Long Island, where Rutgers is.
Right. It used to be that you had schools in the same region, and you would develop rivalries because you know what? If you have a Wisconsin and you have Michigan, they're not far apart. You have people who can travel to those universities by car. It's a rivalry. USC, UCLA, that's a rivalry. So now, these schools are playing. Now, at first, it's kind of cool to see Michigan against USC, outside of the Rose Bowl. But eventually, it's just going to become a regular thing, and those rivalries aren't going to be there. And, it's kind of disappointing, and I don't want to make it seem like
You're
I'm
not
afraid of
fuddy-duddy?
change.
You're not
Correct.
fuddy-duddy,
Because
you're
everything
afraid of change.
changes. I mean, everything changes. I mean, back in the early 1900s when the NCAA came about and, they started implementing change and, then when college sports first started, the athletes weren't even getting scholarships. So when they first got scholarships, it was a big thing. People were like, well, how in the world are you giving these players scholarships? It was a big thing. Our lifetime, we've gotten used to it, and that's the way we've always seen college sports, and that's the way it should be. Now we're in a time in which things are changing, and 20 years from now, people will look at it and they'll go, this is just the way it's supposed to be. And probably something else will come up and people will be like, well, that's not the way it should be. It should be the way it is in 2024. So, it's just about adapting to the change. But for me, it's kind of disheartening to see college sports really become, second level pro sports.
That's where it's at. Well, speaking of second level pro sports, did you ever collect baseball cards?
I did.
Well, I found this today. There's a company called Panini. They will start having college players having their own trading cards. This is a way to get NIL money. So will you be collecting college player trading cards?
I will not, because I'm a grown man.
1 year.
I'm a grown man, and I'm not collecting any kind of, sports cards. Even if I bought a sports card now, by the time it's worth something, I will probably be gone from this earth.
But anyway, so that's the deal. So everything is out there. There's a company that's going to be marketing trading cards for Arch Manning. So you can buy a trading card. You can track him down and get him to sign the card, frame it. Give it away for Christmas to somebody.
Right. And you know what? I still don't have a problem with it. Yeah. Like, if you can make money off of it, because if you really think about it, if you had a trading card from Derek Jeter when he was in high school, you would think, oh, well, you're monopolizing off of a young guy. But if you had that trading card and after he retires as a Hall of Famer and you brought that card out, how much would that card be worth?
Quite a bit.
It's just like a rookie card when they first get into the pros. If he becomes a Hall of Famer, it becomes a lot more money. So if you're capitalizing off of somebody that's in college and you hold on to that card, it could be worth a lot of money.
There's another issue too going. We can't get into this about paying players in high school. Let's not get into that. That's something else. Anyway, so that's going to be our show for today. We really hope you enjoyed it. And remember, hit that like and subscribe button. We really, really appreciate it because we need to make $1 gazillion so we can purchase the NCAA and dismantle it. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.